You know, it is. It's a really funny thing about gravity. We never actually think about it, but it's constantly, relentlessly pulling us downward.
Right, it's just this constant invisible force.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not just talking about physics here. Think about the exact moment you wake up in the morning. Even before your feet hit the floor, there is this other kind of gravity that just, it hits you.
Oh yeah, the mental weight.
Right. You check your phone, you think about your bank account, you remember the rent is due, you realize your knee aches a little bit more than it did last year, and suddenly you're exhausted.
Yeah, before the day even starts.
You haven't even physically gotten out of bed yet, but you're already carrying this immense invisible weight.
It's a very palpable heaviness, and,
Mm.
we tend to just accept that feeling as the normal cost of being alive in the modern era.
Is part of the deal.
Right.
Yeah.
The underlying assumption is that, well, to exist is to be weighed down by the basic logistics of existing.
Which brings us to the core of what we are unpacking with you today in this deep dive. We're looking at a fascinating piece by a thinker named Shuifeng, which was recently translated and edited by Kinyu on April 12th, 2024.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing text.
And Shuifeng argues that this invisible weight isn't some glitch in the human operating system. It's actually the defining characteristic of an entirely distinct dimension that he calls the material world.
Which is quite a bold claim.
It is. The excerpt we're diving into is literally titled, Testing Whether You Live in the Spiritual World. So the mission of our deep dive today is to figure out, based on this text, which world you are actually inhabiting right now.
And it might not be the one you think.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the text doesn't ask you to subscribe to a religion or, abandon society and live in the woods. It looks purely at the psychological friction of your daily routine.
Right, so the author divides human experience into two distinct spheres, basically, the material and the spiritual. But crucially, these aren't locations on a map.
Like, you can't just drive to the spiritual world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are fundamentally different ways of metabolizing reality. And the text starts by defining the material world with one very deliberate, very specific word.
Yes. It calls it tiresome.
Tiresome. Both physically and mentally tiresome.
Which I love because it isn't framed as this sudden, catastrophic crisis. It's described more like a slow, grinding depletion of your energy, like just the sheer friction of getting through a Tuesday.
The daily grind.
Yeah. And Schweif provides a very specific checklist of what creates that friction. The text states that if a person spends their days, months, and years worrying and fretting about life's necessities, they are living in the material world.
And, the list of necessities itself is quite telling when you look at how it groups human concerns.
Oh, it is absolutely wild. When I first read it, it struck me as like the most chaotic daily planner imaginable.
It really is all over the place.
Right. The text lists food, clothing, shelter, transportation, birth, aging, illness, and death. And then it tops the whole thing off with focusing on how to accumulate material wealth and make more money.
It just flattens everything out completely.
Totally flat. You have mundane chores like, pay for transportation and buy groceries written right next to the ultimate existential dread of aging and death. Buying a train ticket is suddenly given the exact same psychological weight as your own mortality.
What's fascinating here is how accurately that flattening mirrors the human experience of anxiety.
Oh, really?
How so? Well, to the anxious mind, to the mind fully operating within Shuifeng's definition of the material world, the threat detection system loses its sense of scale.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
So a flat tire on the way to work and the abstract fear of getting older, they actually trigger the exact same physiological stress response in the body.
Wow.
The brain doesn't neatly categorize a transportation delay as a minor inconvenience and illness as a major threat. It just absorbs them all into this generalized panic about survival.
But I have to push back a little on the underlying premise here. Look at that list again. I need shelter. You need food. None of us want to get sick. It seems practically impossible not to fret about illness or, how you're going to pay the rent. If my lease is up and I don't have the money, I'm going to end up on the street.
Right, that's a very real concern.
That is a stark physical reality, not just some mental construct I made up. So if worrying about these things automatically places me in the material world, aren't we all just kind of doomed to this tiresome existence simply by virtue of having a physical body?
Well, that is the crucial tension the text is playing with, definitely. But I would argue it requires a closer reading of the specific verbs Shuifeng is using.
Okay, lay it on me.
The text doesn't deny the physical reality of a lease expiring or a body aging. It isn't claiming those things don't happen.
So it isn't advocating for some sort of delusion where I just pretend my landlord doesn't exist.
Far from it. The defining characteristic isn't the existence of the rent itself. It is the act of worrying and fretting over it for days, months, and years.
Ah, the duration, the dwelling on it.
Yes. And furthermore, Suifeng explicitly couples those basic survival realities with another highly specific action.
The wealth part.
Exactly. The focus on how to accumulate material wealth and make more money.
Yeah.
The tiresome nature of the material world isn't born from eating a meal or fixing a broken car.
Right.
It's born from the relentless drive to accumulate and the endless, just exhausting psychological rumination about what happens if you fail to accumulate enough.
So the accumulation is the trap, and the rumination is the friction.
Think about the difference between pain and suffering. A broken leg is physical pain. That's real.
Sure.
But sitting in a hospital bed, agonizing over the fact that you break your leg, resenting the ice patch you slipped on, spiraling into fear about whether you'll ever walk the exact same way again, that is suffering.
That is heavy.
And the material world, as defined here, is the realm of suffering. It is allowing the logistics of physical survival to completely consume your temporal existence.
Ooh.
The worrying becomes your actual psychological anchor.
That makes the tiresome label make complete sense. I mean, it exhausts us because we're constantly trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable.
Fleeting.
Right, like aging or the endless accumulation of wealth. We are burning massive amounts of mental energy trying to secure a permanence that just doesn't exist.
And that exhaustion is your indicator that you are trapped in the material world. It's basically a state of perpetual psychological defense.
Okay, so that is the material world. It's heavy. It's an endless loop of fretting over everything from our next meal to our inevitable demise, and it's driven by this constant need to accumulate.
Yes. Very tight.
But here's where it gets really interesting because the text then pivots to describing the spiritual world, and it uses language that is the stark opposite of this exhausting gravity.
The contrast is both abrupt and profound.
The text states that if the material world is defined by being tiresome, the spiritual world is defined in two words. It's effortless.
Effortless.
Yeah. It goes on to elaborate that living in the world of the soul means living lightly, effortless and lightly.
Those words imply a complete total absence of the friction we were just discussing.
Which sounds incredible in theory. But again, I struggle with the practical application here. Floating through life effortlessly sounds dangerously close to apathy.
Or avoidance, yeah.
Or maybe even like toxic positivity. If I'm facing a severe financial crisis or dealing with a serious medical diagnosis and I decide to just live lightly and float through it, I'm probably going to make the situation worse.
Likely, yes.
How do you apply effortlessness when the heavy realities of the material world require actual grinding effort to navigate?
This is where we have to look at how Shui-Feng redefines the very concept of a world. See, we're conditioned to think of the spiritual world as a separate physical dimension.
Like heaven or something.
Right, a place you go after you die, or perhaps a mountaintop monastery where you go to hide from society.
They're cut off from everything.
But by contrasting a state of physical and mental exhaustion with a state of living lightly, the text suggests that the spiritual world is an entirely different operational mode for the human mind, right here, right now, in the present tense.
So it isn't an escape hatch from the broken car or the medical diagnosis.
No, absolutely not. The physical events still occur. The effort required to fix the car or undergo medical treatment, that still exists in the physical realm. The effortlessness refers strictly to the internal experience.
Okay, I think I'm tracking.
To borrow an analogy, think of navigating life like sailing a boat. The material world is the weather, the wind, the storms, the unpredictable currents.
Stuff you can't control.
You cannot control the weather.
Yeah.
Now, the person trapped in the material mindset is standing on the deck, screaming at the wind, terrified of the waves, just exhausting themselves trying to manually push the boat forward.
They are fretting and worrying about the storm.
Exactly. But the person operating in the spiritual world, the one living lightly, recognizes that the storm is happening. They don't pretend the wind isn't blowing.
They see the reality.
Yes. Instead, they simply adjust the sail. They use the energy of the storm without resisting it internally. The physical act of pulling the ropes takes effort, sure, but the mental state is effortless because they have dropped the resistance.
Oh.
They aren't agonizing over why it's raining. They're just sailing the boat.
I see the distinction now. It's about removing the internal resistance to reality. The heavy events still exist, but they no longer exert that intense gravitational pull on your psyche.
Precisely.
The mind stops churning. You're interacting with the material environment, you're paying the rent and buying the groceries, but you are not anchored to the fear of those things.
You're participating in the physical realm without being psychologically captured by it. That is what Sufeng seems to mean by living lightly. The constant, tiresome accounting of needs and the pursuit of accumulation, they're replaced by a state of simple presence.
It's a really beautiful framework, honestly. You have a life weighed down by the constant cataloging of threats versus a soul navigating the world without the baggage of worry.
It's a powerful dichotomy.
It sets up this incredible philosophical binary. Which brings us to what is easily the most bewildering and honestly the most fascinating structural part of this text.
Ah, yes. The diagnostic test itself.
Right. I mean, the entire excerpt is literally titled Testing Whether You Live in the Spiritual World. It promises a definitive way for the reader to figure this out.
It's right there in the title.
The text explicitly sets up a rubric. It says, and I quote, "How can one know if they are living in the spiritual world? Use the following 6 indicators to assess."
It creates a very clear expectation for a checklist.
So you're reading this, you're leaning in, mentally preparing to tally up your score, and then the list isn't there.
Nowhere to be found.
The text immediately skips the 6 indicators entirely. It just jumps straight to the conclusion stating, if you feel or already possess any of the above 6 items, without a doubt, you have freed yourself from the shackles of the material world and are living in the spiritual world.
The famous missing indicators.
It is maddening. It is literally like buying a high-end locked safe to protect your valuables, and the seller hands you a piece of paper that says, here is the 6-digit combination to open your new safe.
Sounds promising.
But the rest of the page is completely blank. There are no numbers. You're just standing there looking at an empty piece of paper holding a locked box. We are promised the definitive cheat code to effortless living, and the text just leaves us hanging. I want to know exactly what those 6 things are so I can try to acquire them.
This raises an important question about intent, particularly when analyzing translated philosophical texts.
Yeah, why the omission?
Right. We could assume it was just a translation error by Kinyu, or maybe a dropped paragraph in the editing process. But if we treat the text exactly as it is presented to us, the omission might actually be the most profound lesson in the entire piece.
Wait, really? How could leaving out the most important information be a lesson?
Well, consider your immediate reaction just now. You said you wanted to know the 6 things so you could acquire them. You wanted a rubric to measure yourself against.
Yeah, I want the cheat code. I want to know if I am passing the test.
But that desire, the drive to acquire indicators, to measure progress, to hoard spiritual checkpoints, that is the exact mechanism of the material world.
Oh my God.
Remember, Xu Feng defined the material world by the focus on how to accumulate. We are so deeply conditioned by the material mindset that we immediately try to apply it to spirituality.
We treat enlightenment like a grocery list.
Exactly. If the text had provided those 6 indicators, we would obsess over them, we would fret over whether we possess them, we would turn the spiritual world into just another tiresome pursuit of accumulation.
Oh, that is a massive blind spot. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was literally trying to hoard spiritual traits the exact same way someone might hoard money. I was bringing the gravity of the material world right into the concept of the soul.
We all do it.
Yeah.
It's what some philosophers call spiritual materialism. The ego loves a checklist, because a checklist gives the ego something to achieve and own. By withholding the list, the text completely short-circuits that acquisitive mindset. It forces you to stop looking outward for validation.
It takes away the measuring stick. So if we can't measure ourselves against a list of 6 items, how do we actually know which world we're in?
Well, the text gives us the ultimate answer key, right there in that final sentence, even without the list. Let's look at the specific phrasing Shuofeng uses. The conclusion says, if you feel or already possess any of the above 6 items, without a doubt, you have freed yourself from the shackles of the material world.
Free yourself from the shackles. That is incredibly evocative imagery.
It is. A shackle is something heavy that binds you, restricts your movement, and causes friction against your skin. It is the perfect antithesis to living lightly or effortlessly.
Definitely.
What the text suggests, by jumping straight to this imagery, is that the profound realization isn't about identifying 6 specific psychological traits. The realization is the raw feeling of the shackles falling off.
The feeling of being freed. So the exact indicators are completely irrelevant. The sensation of release is the only metric that matters.
Exactly. If you are no longer experiencing the physical and mental exhaustion of the daily grind, if your mind isn't consumed by the endless loop of fretting over aging, illness, and wealth, you don't need a list to tell you that you are free.
Right, you just know.
You know you are no longer in shackles because you can finally move without friction. The absence of the tiresome gravity is the proof itself.
That completely flips the paradigm. Instead of looking outward for a guru or a text to validate our spiritual progress, we're forced to look inward at our own psychological state. It asks a very simple internal binary question. Do I feel shackled by my life, or do I feel light within it?
By leaving out the indicators, the text prevents the spiritual world from becoming another chore. It demands that you become an active participant in defining what your own freedom actually feels like.
Okay, let's unpack this. So, what does this all mean for you listening to this right now? We started this deep dive with a mission to figure out which world you're living in based on this translation of Shui Feng's work. And what we have uncovered isn't a roadmap to a mystical dimension, but basically a mirror reflecting your current relationship with reality.
We are looking at a very stark division of experience.
On one side, we have the material world, and we've established that it is not defined by the fact that you own a car or pay rent or experience illness. It is defined entirely by the mental and physical toll of how you relate to those things.
It is the realm of suffering.
It is tiresome. It's the endless grinding, fretting over life's necessities, and the relentless, exhausting focus on trying to control the uncontrollable by accumulating wealth. It is an existence lived in shackles.
And on the other side, we have the spiritual world, the world of the soul. The defining characteristic of this space is effortlessness. It is a state of mental liberation. You still exist in the physical realm. You still have to navigate the storms and the broken down cars. But you are no longer anchored by the anxiety of it all. You are adjusting the sail instead of screaming at the wind.
And perhaps the most brilliant part of this entire framework is the missing test. Even though we never got our promised 6 indicators to formally assess ourselves, the omission delivered a much more profound truth. You don't need a rubric to know if you are free from gravity. The proof of the spiritual world is simply the feeling of the shackles being removed.
Which leaves us with an incredibly fertile space to explore on our own. Since those 6 indicators of the spiritual world were left out of the excerpt, it offers a really unique opportunity for active reflection. I would invite you to try and reverse engineer them for your own life.
Reverse engineer the missing list. I really like where this is going.
Think about the mechanics of what Shufeng is arguing. If the material world is defined by the heavy action of fretting over food, aging, illness, and accumulating wealth, perhaps your personal indicators for the spiritual world aren't new philosophical concepts you need to actively acquire.
Because acquisition is a trap.
We know that acquisition is a material trap. So perhaps those 6 missing items on the blank page are actually 6 specific, heavy worries you are finally ready to let go of.
What a profound way to look at it, because we all woke up today feeling that gravity. We all felt that heavy, tiresome pull of the obligations, the financial anxiety, the fear of getting older, the regrets about yesterday.
Every single day.
But this text reminds us that while the physical realities of life are mandatory, the suffering, the gravity is optional. The shackles only hold you if you keep pulling against them. You don't have to change your physical location or your tax bracket to change your world.
You just change your operational mode.
So as you go about the rest of your day, whether you are dealing with a stressful commute, buying groceries, or just navigating the incredibly complex reality of being human, we encourage you to check your operational mode. Are you fretting over the storm, or are you just adjusting the sail? See if you can identify just one of those shackles today and drop it. See if you can carry just a little bit of that lightness with you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.